A forgotten photo on a corporate computer. A feared CEO alone by a quiet lake. An invisible IT tech staring at an image no one was ever meant to see. What started as a routine maintenance call on the 40th floor was not just an honest comment in the wrong place. It was the trigger for a silent plan that would shake the power structure of an entire company. A plan that would have gone completely unnoticed if she hadn't stopped, turned to him, and asked why he dared to tell her the truth. This is the story of how one seemingly innocent compliment changed two careers, rewired a corporate culture, and gave a man who lived in the shadows a voice that could no longer be ignored. There are people who go through life like ghosts, present but unseen, necessary but forgotten. Ryan Mitchell was one of them. A quiet IT technician in his mid-30s, he spent his days fixing computers in the lower floors of Pierce Industries, a billion-dollar conglomerate where marble lobbies gleamed and people in tailored suits talked in numbers that could buy entire neighborhoods. He was the guy you called when your screen went black, the one who showed up with a toolbox and left without small talk. Invisible by design, because visibility meant risk, and risk meant instability, something a single father raising a 7-year-old daughter couldn't afford. But on the 40th floor, in a corner office where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Chicago skyline like a painting of ambition itself, sat Elena Pierce, CEO. Forbes cover. The woman who'd built an empire before turning 40. Cold, brilliant, untouchable. She made decisions that moved markets and ran meetings where grown men shifted nervously in Italian leather chairs. No one saw her as just a woman. She was a title, a force, a reputation carved in steel and glass. Then one Tuesday afternoon, a system crash brought Ryan to her door. And one accidental glimpse of a photograph, a younger Elena by a lake, barefoot and smiling like she had nothing to prove, changed everything. Because when she caught him looking and asked point blank, "Do you think I'm beautiful?" he didn't lie. He didn't flatter. He told her the truth, that the woman in that photo looked real and happy and free. Like a person, not a position. In that moment, one honest answer to the most powerful woman in the building could cost him the job that kept his daughter in their apartment and in school. He could stay invisible and safe like he always had, or risk everything by saying what no one else had the courage to say to her. He chose the truth, and that honesty cracked something open inside a woman the whole company treated like a logo. From that day on, neither of them would ever be invisible again. The service ticket came through at 2:47 p.m., coded red with a priority flag Ryan had only seen 3 times in 4 years. Executive suite. System failure. Immediate response required. His stomach tightened. Red tickets meant someone important was waiting, someone who didn't tolerate delays or excuses. He grabbed his laptop bag, checked his badge, and headed for the elevator bank. The ride to the 40th floor felt longer than it should have. Ryan stared at his reflection in the polished steel doors, wrinkled blue work shirt with the Pierce Industries logo on the pocket, scuffed sneakers, hair that needed a trim. He looked exactly like what he was, a guy who crawled under desks and rebooted routers while the world above him decided on mergers and acquisitions. The elevator chimed. The doors opened onto a different universe. White marble floors, glass walls, silence so thick it felt intentional. A receptionist with perfect posture glanced up. "You're the tech?" "Yeah, Ryan Mitchell." She gestured toward a hallway. End of the corridor, Ms. Pierce's office. Knock before entering. Ryan walked slowly, his footsteps too loud against the stone. He passed framed magazine covers featuring Elena Pierce in black blazers, arms crossed, eyes sharp as glass. Woman of the Year, 30 under 30. The new face of corporate power. She looked like someone who'd never needed anyone for anything. The kind of person who could end a career with a single email and forget your name 5 minutes later. The door at the end had no nameplate. It didn't need one. Ryan knocked twice, soft but clear. "Come in." The office was enormous, bigger than his entire apartment. One wall was entirely glass, framing the city like it belonged to her. A sleek desk sat in the center, empty except for a laptop, a single pen, and a glass of water with a precise lemon wedge. And behind the desk sat Elena Pierce. She was smaller than he'd expected. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back tight, sharp gray suit that probably cost more than his car. She didn't look up when he entered, just kept typing, her fingers precise and fast. "System's frozen," she said, still not looking at him. "I have a board call in 20 minutes and I can't access my presentation files. I'll take a look." His voice came out quieter than intended. She finally glanced up, just briefly, her gaze sweeping over him like he was part of the furniture. "Make it fast." Ryan moved around the desk, hyper-aware of how close he was standing to her, how her perfume smelled like something expensive and cold, vetiver, maybe, or cedar. He set his bag down, pulled out his toolkit, and leaned in to examine her screen. Blue screen of death. Classic hard drive error. Fixable, but it would take a few minutes. "I need to restart in safe mode," he said. "It'll take about 5 minutes to diagnose, maybe 10 to resolve." Elena exhaled, a small sound of controlled frustration. Fine. He got to work, fingers moving through keyboard shortcuts, opening diagnostics, watching lines of code scroll past. The room was so quiet he could hear her breathing, measured and even. Could feel her watching him, which made his hands want to shake. "You're new?" she asked suddenly. "Not really. Been here 4 years. Just downstairs. Floors 2 through 15. "Ah." She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs. The invisible floors. Ryan didn't know how to respond to that, so he didn't. He just kept working, forcing the restart, waiting for the system to cycle through recovery mode. The progress bar moved slowly, painfully slowly, and the silence stretched like taffy. Then the screen flickered. And for just a split second before the login window loaded, an image appeared, a desktop wallpaper that must have been cached in memory. It was a photograph. A younger Elena, maybe mid-20s, standing by a lake. No makeup. Hair down and loose, catching the wind. Wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt, barefoot on a wooden dock. And she was smiling, not the tight, controlled smile from the magazine covers, but something real and wide and completely unguarded. Behind her, mountains rose green and soft, and the water reflected the sky like a mirror. She looked happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Like someone who had nowhere to be and nothing to prove. The image vanished as the login screen loaded. Ryan's finger hovered over the keyboard. He didn't look at her. Didn't acknowledge what he'd seen. That was the protocol when you accidentally glimpse someone's private files or personal photos. Pretend it never happened. But he felt her go still beside him. Felt the air in the room change temperature. "You saw that?" It wasn't a question. Ryan swallowed. "I'm sorry. It was just a glitch during reboot." Where was I? He blinked, looked at her. She was staring at him now, directly, her eyes sharp and unreadable. I don't know. A lake? Mountains? Colorado, she said quietly. 10 years ago. A pause. Then, do you think I look different? The question hung in the air like a trap. Ryan's mind raced. This was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company asking him, a guy who fixed printers, to comment on her appearance. Every instinct screamed lie, deflect, say something neutral. But something about the way she asked it, something raw beneath the control, made him tell the truth. "Yeah," he said. "You look happier in the picture." Elena blinked. Something flickered across her face, too fast to name. "Happier," she repeated, like she was testing the word. "Not more beautiful? Not younger?" Ryan hesitated. "Then, you look beautiful in both. But in the picture, you look real, like a person someone could actually talk to." The silence that followed was absolute. Elena Pierce stared at him for 3 full seconds, her expression completely unreadable. Then she turned back to her screen. "Finish the repair." "Yes, ma'am." His hands were shaking now. He typed in her credentials, ran the final diagnostic, confirmed the files were accessible. "You're all set. The presentation should load fine now." "Good." She didn't look at him. "You can go." Ryan packed up his tools, moving fast, feeling like he'd just stepped on a landmine. He headed for the door, already replaying the conversation in his mind, wondering if he'd just talked himself into unemployment. "Ryan." He froze, hand on the doorknob, turned. Elena was looking at him now, really looking like she was seeing him for the first time. Her expression was still controlled, still guarded, but something in her eyes had shifted. "Thank you," she said. And then, quieter, "For being honest." He nodded, not trusting his voice, and left. The elevator ride down felt like falling. Ryan didn't sleep well that night. He kept replaying the moment, the photograph, the question, the way Elena Pierce's voice had softened when she asked if she looked happier. He'd crossed a line. He knew it. You didn't tell powerful people uncomfortable truths. You told them what they wanted to hear, took your paycheck, and kept your head down. But he'd looked at that picture and seen something he recognized. Loneliness. The exhaustion of wearing a mask so long you forget what your real face looks like. Sophie woke him at 6:30 a.m. by jumping on his bed. Dad, you promised pancakes." He couldn't argue with 7-year-old logic. So he dragged himself to the kitchen, mixed batter, flipped pancakes while Sophie colored at the table, talking nonstop about her friend Maya's new backpack. Normal. Breakfast, school drop-off, work, pickup, homework, dinner, bedtime. A rhythm he'd built carefully over 3 years since Sophie's mom left. He dropped Sophie at school, watched her run toward the playground, and drove to work. The notification appeared on his phone at 10:15 a.m. Calendar invite. Meeting with E. Pierce. Today, 6 p.m. Executive Conference Room 40B. His blood went cold. 6 p.m. After hours. A private meeting with the CEO. This was it. He was getting fired. Or worse, she was going to file some kind of complaint about inappropriate comments. He'd overstepped, gotten personal, and now she was going to make an example of him. In his head, he could already see the chain reaction. No job, no rent. Sophie yanked out of her school and folded into Claire's spare room, their whole life packed into a few boxes. All because he hadn't been able to keep one honest thought to himself. The day crawled by. He fixed a printer jam on the 9th floor, reset a password for someone in accounting, replaced a monitor cable in the legal department. Normal tasks. But his mind kept circling back to that meeting. At 5:45 p.m., he took the elevator back to 40. The receptionist was gone. The hallway lights were dimmed to after-hours mode. Conference room 40B sat at the far end, glowing behind frosted glass. Ryan knocked. "Come in." Elena Pierce sat alone at the head of a long glass table, the city lights twinkling behind her. She'd taken off her suit jacket. Her sleeves were rolled to her elbows. She looked tired. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chair nearest her. Ryan sat, trying to keep his hands still, trying to look calm, professional, like he wasn't about to lose the job that paid for Sophie's school and their rent and everything that mattered. Elena studied him for a moment, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. Then, "I'm not going to fire you." The relief was physical. He exhaled. "But I need to ask you something," she continued. "And I need you to answer honestly, the way you did yesterday." Ryan nodded slowly. "Okay. Why didn't you lie?" He blinked. "I'm sorry? Yesterday. When I asked if I looked different, you could have said something polite. Something safe. You look great, Miss Pierce. Very professional. But you didn't. You told me I looked happier in a 10-year-old photograph. Why?" Ryan swallowed. Because you asked like you actually wanted to know. People ask me things all the time. No, he said carefully. They ask the CEO things. They ask the title. They want approval or permission or a signature. But yesterday, you asked me, person to person. And it felt wrong to lie to that. Elena's expression didn't change, but she went very still. Do you know how rare that is? Someone speaking to me like I'm not a position to be managed? I haven't had an honest interaction in years. And then you, a technician who fixes computers, tell me the truth in 10 seconds. Ryan didn't know what to say to that. Elena leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. That photograph, the one you saw, that was me at 26. I just sold my first startup, made my first $1 million. I went to my family's cabin in Colorado to celebrate. Alone. No press, no investors, no lawyers. Just me and that lake. And I remember thinking, she paused, I remember thinking I'd made it. That everything from that point on would be easier. But it wasn't. No. She smiled, but it was sad. I built an empire. Forbes covers, board seats, keynote speeches. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being Elena. I became the brand, the reputation, the woman who never shows weakness. She looked away toward the window. But yesterday, when you saw that picture, for the first time in a decade, someone looked at me and saw the person I used to be, not the CEO, just me. The silence stretched. Ryan felt like he was holding something fragile, something that might shatter if he moved wrong. Can I ask you something now? He said. Go ahead. Why are you telling me this? Elena turned back to him, and for just a moment, the mask slipped completely. Because I'm lonely. And I'm tired of pretending I'm not. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and real. Then she straightened, the armor sliding back into place. I have a proposal for you. A proposal? I'm restructuring the company culture, creating a confidential task force to identify systemic problems and implement solutions. I need people who understand what it's like on the ground floor. People who tell the truth. She paused. I want you on the team. Ryan stared at her. I'm an IT technician. Exactly. You see the company from a perspective I don't have access to. You know where the cracks are, where people are frustrated, overlooked, invisible. She leaned back. I'm offering you a 6-month contract. Double your current salary. Confidential meetings twice a week. You keep your normal job, but you also help me fix what's broken. Starting from the bottom up, his mind reeled, double salary. That meant savings for Sophie's future. Maybe a better apartment. Maybe not lying awake at night doing mental math about grocery bills. But it also meant visibility, attention, risk. I need to think about it, he said. Elena nodded. You have 24 hours. She slid a folder across the table. NDA, contract terms. Read it. Decide. She stood, signaling the meeting was over. But Ryan? He looked up. I'm not asking you to be anything other than what you already are. Someone who tells the truth. That's all I need. He left with the folder under his arm, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Ryan sat at his kitchen table and opened the folder. The contract was simple. 6 months. Consultant role, reporting directly to the CEO. Salary, $12,000 per month, paid bi-weekly. Confidentiality clause, non-disclosure agreement. It was more money than he'd seen in his life. He thought about Sophie's shoes, how they were getting too small, but he'd been waiting for a sale. Thought about the dentist appointment he'd been postponing. Thought about the credit card balance that kept creeping higher no matter how carefully he budgeted. But he also thought about the last time he tried to be visible. 4 years ago, when he'd applied for a team lead position. When he'd put himself forward, spoken up in meetings, tried to prove he was more than just a fix-it guy. And when the position went to someone else, someone with better connections, smoother talk, he'd learned the lesson. Stay small, stay safe. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister Claire. "How's my favorite niece?" He smiled, typed back. "Asleep, finally. And how's my favorite brother who never takes care of himself?" "I'm fine, liar. When's the last time you did something for you?" He stared at the message. Couldn't remember. Another text. "Whatever you're overthinking right now, the answer is yes. Take the risk. Sophie will be proud of you." He didn't know how she always knew. But she was right. Sophie would be proud. Not because of the money, though that mattered, but because he'd be showing her that you could say yes to scary things, that you didn't have to stay invisible forever. At 11:47 p.m., he opened his email and typed, "Miss Pierce, I accept." Ryan Mitchell he hit send before he could change his mind. For the first time in years, he had chosen something that might make him visible on purpose, and that thought scared him more than any late bill ever had. The first task force meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday at 7 p.m. in conference room 40B. Ryan showed up at 6:55, dressed in the nicest shirt he owned. His palms were sweating. He pushed open the door. 5 people sat around the glass table. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a legal pad. A younger man in an expensive watch scrolling through his tablet, 2 others in business casual. And at the head of the table, Helena Pierce, composed and unreadable. Everyone looked at him when he entered. He felt immediately, painfully out of place. "Ryan," Helena said, gesturing to an empty chair. "Thank you for joining us," he sat, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. "Everyone," Helena continued, "this is Ryan Mitchell. He'll be joining our task force as a ground-level consultant. Ryan works in IT and has insights into employee experience that we need." The woman with the legal pad, her nameplate read Patricia Morgan, General Counsel, gave him a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. The guy with the expensive watch, Derek Hayes, VP of Operations, barely looked up. Elena opened a folder. "Tonight we're focusing on internal feedback mechanisms. Current employee surveys show a 62% satisfaction rate, but exit interviews reveal dissatisfaction with communication and recognition. Derek, walk us through the data." Derek launched into a presentation full of graphs and metrics. Ryan tried to follow but felt like he was listening to a foreign language. ROIKP is engagement analytics. Numbers that represented people but felt nothing like them. 20 minutes in, Elena turned to him. "Ryan, from your perspective, what's the biggest communication gap you see?" Every eye in the room shifted to him. His throat went dry. He cleared his throat. "I think people don't believe their feedback matters." Derek frowned. The kind of tight, controlled expression that said he wasn't used to being contradicted by anyone, much less a guy in a faded IT polo. "We have multiple feedback channels. Anonymous surveys, suggestion boxes, quarterly town halls." "Yeah," Ryan interrupted, then immediately regretted his tone. But he kept going. "But no one uses them." "Because nothing changes. You fill out a survey saying the break room on floor 7 doesn't have enough microwaves, and 6 months later, still no microwaves. So people stop trying." Patricia leaned forward. "That seems like a minor operational issue." "It is," Ryan agreed, "but it's not about the microwaves. It's about feeling heard. People spend 40, 50 hours a week here. If they can't get a response on something small, why would they trust you with something big?" Silence. Elena was watching him, her expression unreadable. Then she said, "Give me another example." Ryan's mind raced. "Security badges. Mine stopped working last month. One submitted 3 tickets. Took 2 weeks to get a replacement. Meanwhile, I had to get escorted through the lobby every morning by someone with clearance. Made me feel like a criminal." "Did you escalate?" Derek asked. "To who?" The system said, processing. There's no human to talk to. Elena made a note. What would fix it? I don't know, Ryan admitted. Maybe a person? Someone whose job is to actually listen and solve problems, not just log tickets into a database. Patricia looked skeptical. That's not scalable. Neither is losing people because they feel invisible, Ryan said. Elena's pen stopped moving. She looked at him. Say that again. People leave when they feel invisible. When they're just numbers on a report. You can fix that with better software or more surveys, but at the end of the day, someone has to actually care. The room went quiet. Elena sat back, a small smile touching the corner of her mouth. Exactly, she turned to the others. I want a proposal by next week. A human-first feedback system, real people, real responses, real accountability. Derek, you're leading it. Ryan, I want you to help design it. Derek looked like he'd just been told to work with a janitor. Miss Pierce, with respect, Ryan doesn't have experience in. He didn't even bother to look at Ryan when he said it, like he was talking about a faulty piece of equipment that needed to be quietly removed from the room. He has the experience that matters, Elena said coolly. The experience of being ignored. She closed her folder. That's all for tonight. Ryan, stay for a moment. The others filed out, and Derek lingered just long enough to shoot Ryan a look that was somewhere between annoyance and calculation. It said clearly, you just made my job harder. Enjoy this while it lasts. The door clicked shut. Elena stood, moved to the window, her back to him. You did well. I talked too much. You said what no one else was willing to say. She turned. How do you feel? Terrified. She laughed, a real laugh, soft and unexpected. Good, that means you care. She crossed her arms. This is going to get harder. People like Derek will push back. They'll question your qualifications, your relevance. Can you handle that? Ryan thought about Sophie, about the credit card balance, about the way Claire had told him to take the risk. Yeah, he said. I can, Elena nodded. Then we keep going. Over the next 6 weeks, the meetings became routine. Twice a week, Ryan climbed to the 40th floor and sat in rooms where decisions worth millions were made. He learned to speak up, to back his observations with examples, to hold his ground when challenged. He told them about the custodian written up for a long break. No one knew her mother was dying. About the mailroom guy whose delivery idea got buried. About assuming maintenance uniforms meant less intelligence. Elena listened to everything, took notes, asked follow-up questions, and slowly things began to change. An anonymous feedback hotline went live, staffed by real people trained in empathy. Response time dropped from weeks to days. Small fixes, better lighting in the parking garage, upgraded break room equipment, flexible start times for parents got implemented fast. And people noticed. Ryan started getting stopped in hallways. A woman from accounting thanked him for mentioning the parking garage lights. A guy from facilities said the new feedback system actually worked. Even his own team in IT asked if he'd had something to do with the recent changes. He deflected, stayed vague, kept the NDA. But inside, something was shifting. He wasn't invisible anymore. Not completely. Not everyone was happy. At one task force meeting, Derek clicked to a new slide and the screen filled with red and orange bars. Complaint volume is up 140% since we launched the hotline, he said, his voice clipped. We're pouring time and money into issues that should be handled at the departmental level. We're teaching people that every annoyance deserves executive attention. Ryan felt his stomach knot. He could stay quiet and let the numbers win. Or he could open his mouth and give Derek one more reason to hate him. Or, he heard himself say, we finally taught them that someone is actually listening. The room went still. Derek didn't look at him. With respect, Ryan, you don't manage our cost centers. No, Ryan replied, heart racing. I just watch good people disappear from desks that used to be full. For a second, it was just the two of them across the table, the air thick with challenge. Then Elena's voice cut through the tension. Enough. High volume means high trust. We asked for honest input, and now we have it. We adapt the system. We don't punish people for using it. The meeting moved on, but the line had been drawn. Derek had his numbers. Ryan had his people. And Elena, for reasons he still didn't fully understand, kept choosing to stand beside him. It was past 9 p.m. when the meeting finally ended. Everyone else had left, but Ryan lingered, packing up his notes slowly. Elena was still at the table, staring at her laptop, her face lit by the blue glow of the screen. "You should go home," she said without looking up. "Sophie's probably waiting." He blinked. "You remember her name?" Of course. She closed the laptop, finally meeting his eyes. "You talk about her a lot, in a good way. It's clear she's your whole world." Ryan sat back down. "She is. I worry I'm not enough, you know? That I can't give her everything she deserves." "Like what?" "I don't know. Stability. A mom who didn't leave. A dad who isn't always tired. Or missing the things that matter. Today she had something at school. I was in a meeting up here instead." Something in Elena's expression shifted. Just a fraction, like he'd brushed against a bruise she usually kept hidden under perfect tailoring and a packed calendar. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then, "Can I tell you something?" "Sure. When I was building this company, I told myself I didn't have time for relationships, for family. That success required sacrifice. And I believed it." She looked down at her hands. "But now I sit in this office every night, alone, and I wonder what I sacrificed it all for. Numbers on a screen? A reputation? What does it mean if there's no one to share it with?" "You're not alone," Ryan said. "You have a whole company. A company isn't a family." Her voice was soft, almost fragile. "It's a machine. And I'm just the person who keeps it running." He didn't know what to say. So he just sat there, letting the silence hold them both. Finally, Elena stood. "Thank you." "For what?" "For listening. For seeing me as more than just the CEO." She smiled, small but real. "For telling me the truth when no one else will." "You're paying me for it," he joked. "No," she shook her head. "I'm paying you for your insights. The honesty? That's something you can't buy." They stood there, two people from completely different worlds, connected by something neither of them fully understood yet. "I'm going back to Colorado," Elena said suddenly. "To the lake. This weekend. I need to... I don't know. Remember who I was before all this." "That sounds good," Ryan said. "Really good. Will you be okay without me for a few days?" He smiled. "I think I'll manage," she nodded, gathering her things. At the door, she paused. "Ryan? Yeah? Thank you for helping me remember it's okay to be human." And then she was gone, the door clicking softly behind her. Ryan picked Sophie up from Claire's house on Saturday morning. She ran to the car with a drawing she'd made. Stick figures labeled me and Dad and Aunt Claire, all holding hands under a rainbow, with a fourth, smaller figure in a crooked triangle that looked vaguely like a suit jacket. "Who's this?" he asked, pointing to the tiny extra figure. "The lady you talk about," Sophie said. "The one with the big office. I didn't know how to spell her name, so I wrote it in my head." "Do you like it?" she asked, eyes bright. "I love it," he said, and meant it. They drove home, stopped for groceries, made lunch together. Normal Saturday things. But as he watched Sophie color at the kitchen table, he realized something had changed. Not in the routine, not in the apartment or the bills or the schedule. In him. He wasn't invisible anymore. Not at work, where people now asked his opinion. Not in meetings, where his voice carried weight. And not in his own life, where he'd stopped apologizing for being just a technician, just a single dad, just someone trying his best. Elena had gone to Colorado to find herself again. And somehow, by helping her, Ryan had found himself too. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Made it to the lake. It's exactly how I remembered. Thank you for reminding me this place exists. He smiled, typed back. Thank you for reminding me I exist. 3 dots appeared. Then, you were never invisible, Ryan. I just wasn't looking. A second later, another notification popped up. An internal company-wide email. Pierce Industries was launching a new initiative called the Invisible Voices Program, a permanent team dedicated to listening to employees from every floor, every badge color, every so-called invisible corner of the building. As he skimmed the description, Ryan recognized almost every idea they had fought for in those late-night meetings. He pocketed his phone and turned back to Sophie, who was now adding more clouds to her rainbow, tongue poking out in concentration. Outside, the afternoon light filtered through the kitchen window, warm and golden. The bills were still on the counter. The laundry was still waiting. Life was still complicated and messy and uncertain. But for the first time in years, Ryan Mitchell felt seen. Really, truly seen. And that, he realized, was enough. In Chicago, 40 floors up, Elena Pierce's office sat empty, the city lights twinkling against the glass. Her desk was clear except for 2 things: a framed photograph of a younger woman standing by a lake, barefoot and smiling, remembering what it felt like to be free. And propped beside it, a slightly wrinkled child's drawing of 4 stick figures under a rainbow. Me, Dad, Aunt Claire, and a little figure in a triangle of lines labeled in shaky letters, the lady in the suit. And in Colorado, that same woman stood on that same dock, feeling the wind in her hair, finally allowing herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be both powerful and human at the same time. The story didn't end with declarations or promises. It ended with understanding, with 2 people who'd learned to see each other, and in doing so, learned to see themselves again. Sometimes that's all the ending you need.